back to our last episode of the year for the Graduate's Guide as Christmas is fast approaching. Today, we are going to be talking about rejection. I'm your co-host, Emma, and we have with me also my other co-host, Gabby.
Hi, everyone. So rejection is a funny thing. It's something that we all experience a lot, and something I know Emma and I have spoken about at length to each other and a little bit in the podcast so far. And we're taught that rejection is just part of being an adult, from failing job applications to interview processes and all these other things that we try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. And we're sometimes learned to just completely dissociate from it, but that doesn't really tell the whole truth and doesn't make it any less personal or hurtful. And the inspiration behind this episode today is actually a rejection that you recently faced. And I thought we'd kick off with that little story if you want to share with the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So I recently got rejected in my writing, and it was one of the first sort of experiences I had with being rejected as a writer. I'm used to rejection in like job interviews and applications, and working in like drama and being rejected for like auditions and all that sort of stuff in drama schools. But it was a strange experience because with writing at uni, I was getting really high grades, and we had this opportunity with the big issue to have like one of our pieces like pitched to the big issue, and mine got shortlisted. And I remember thinking, oh, this is a really amazing, and I didn't really want to tell a lot of people because I was like, okay, there's a possibility that this won't work. But then people were like, no, that's amazing, like you've got to like own it. So I was not that I thought I was going to get it, but I was also like really hopeful I was going to get it. And I remember when I found out that I was unsuccessful, I was kind of like, oh, like it kind of sucked. And it was a weird feeling because, like I said before, like I've never sort of had any level of rejection with my writing. I guess that's just because it's always sort of been a personal thing that I haven't really shared unless it's been on the Graduate's Guide. And you get like draft feedback, but it's always been published. And then again, like not failing like an essay at uni. So I was really like dedicated and got good marks. And so to get rejected, it was a strange feeling. And yeah, it's interesting because you think that like every time you get rejected, it hurts just a little bit more. And I know people say, oh yeah, you've got to embrace it, and it's like, don't take it personal, but it's such a personal thing because it's like, well, what's wrong with my work? Why doesn't it fit the brief? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, and you've probably had like heaps of experience.
I think being rejected for your creative work is that little extra edge of that personal experience, because it's something that's quite it's like deep rooted inside, like it's meaningful
an art thing
to
and
you.
It came from you.
And it's like it came from you, and especially I know with the piece that you're talking about, you put so much effort in, and so it's all that too, of like the time and the process that you put in, and like the excitement of shortlisting and everything. Like it would just feel like like that little last little hurdle you didn't get to clear. I think I am a bit like you. Like I haven't had that many like big rejections from my writing. Again, it's as I haven't put myself out there for them. Although I did recently apply for like a writing residency, and I didn't get that. But there were apparently over like 400 applications, and it was one of those things where like they couldn't even give feedback. So it was a bit like, oh, okay, I get it. There's like a lot of people, but was there actually something wrong with my work? It's like that awkward thing of like, okay, I can just accept that this is something that's happened, but also, is there something I'm doing wrong? Like, should I do something differently?
I think that's what makes rejection really hard, is like when you can't get that feedback for what you're doing wrong. And sometimes you're not even doing anything wrong. It's just that you don't fit the brief or the description that they're after, or sometimes it's just that person that interviewed better than you. But when you don't know, and that was a thing with drama school, like they could never give you like feedback, and it was sort of like, okay, I have to wait another year, and then you didn't know what you were doing wrong, sort of thing. And like I had like someone I hired to watch my audition, and they were like, do this. They gave me like pointers and stuff. This was the third time I went for it, and like they're like, do this. And so even when I still didn't get through, I was like, so what am I doing wrong? Because like I'm obviously doing something wrong. But unfortunately it's just the nature of the beast, especially in creativity, but and the creative field. But it's a very weird feeling, because it's almost like you get that excitement, and then I guess one of my things that or feedback that I would give people who have experienced rejection and they're coming into it, it's okay to be disappointed, because
Yeah.
you've obviously put an effort into something. It's not a weakness to be like I remember the first time I didn't get into like drama school, I cried, like, and I was like
Yeah.
sobbing. I was like, oh my God, like all this work and I have to wait another year. It was like really
Yeah.
awful. And I remember thinking, what's wrong with me? And I started picking
Mm.
apart like everything. So I think you do get better. It's something that you do get better with time when you're just like, okay, they weren't after me.
Mm.
But I think, yeah, that's one of the main pieces of advice I would give, is that it's okay to be disappointed, because you put effort into something. It it
Yeah.
it just, as long as it doesn't deter you from trying again. And I think
Mm.
that's when we talk about embracing rejection, that's the thing that we sort of talk, what we're trying to channel in this episode, is that, yeah, it's okay to be disappointed, but it doesn't mean you give up, if that makes sense.
And I think it's important, and something we stopped doing, because you even said it at the beginning when you were telling your story, that you didn't want to tell people because you didn't want to
Yeah.
like jinx it. But it's like, I think we should find a way to celebrate our little wins, even
Mm.
if we don't get the big prize at the end. Like, it's still like the fact you were shortlisted out of
Yeah,
all those people, like that's an amazing achievement in and of itself.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like we're at the Oscars. It's an honor to be nominated, but
Yeah, yeah. But it is. It's sort of like,
but
well, people are
it
like, oh,
is.
yeah. Because I was very
Yeah.
like, oh, no, I'm not going to tell that many people. And I was like, I think I only told like my mum and a few friends and you. And I was like, look, it's not a
Yeah.
big deal. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I think that
It's a
was
big
just me
deal.
trying to downplay it, because I was like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
It's um, like I think as well, you're allowed to get your hopes up. And some
Yes.
people, so you can take or leave this advice, but I found it's never worked for me. Some people have always said,
Okay.
you need to go in there like you've already got the job.
No, that doesn't work for me either.
Doesn't work for me either. And
Because
like,
I've had that advice before too, and
yeah,
it doesn't work.
I actually, there was a period of time where I was applying for positions when I worked in the for the government in the city, and
Mm,
I was trying to get an ongoing position because I was always fixed term. And so people
yeah.
would be, the worst advice I got was, you need to go in there like you have the job already, um, and just pretend like it's another drama role, like you're acting for a role, and like
Mm,
so you won't be nervous. And I felt like in that interview I was so nervous because I was sort of like talking myself up and pretending to be someone I wasn't. And I
mm,
think I came across like a little arrogant, and so maybe that's why I didn't get it, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
yeah,
Okay. It's hard because I mean, and we can, this is like a whole different sort of wormhole, but
yeah,
that's even then different for men and women, right? Like women
yeah,
walk into a room, pretend to be confident. That portrays something different to when a man does it.
yeah.
So there's like a whole thing of like, again, that's probably like a whole another podcast episode, but that's like an element of it too, of like they don't necessarily
Mm,
expect like a young woman to walk in there so confidently. And
yeah.
maybe they're so taken aback that it does come across as arrogance, even though it wasn't arrogance. You were
No,
literally just
I
trying
was
a new
literally just
technique to get a
trying a new
job.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
literally.
and
Yeah,
it's okay to like try things out, especially if you've like gone for a few interviews. Like, yeah, try something new. Like, but I
yeah.
think, yeah, you're right. I think you've got to do what feels authentic to you. And both for you
Mm,
and me, it wouldn't feel authentic to walk into a room and be like, I'm the best, you're gonna hire me. Like some people
yeah.
that works. It's not gonna work for me.
No.
Yeah. So it's yeah, really you've got to kind of just find a way to present yourself that is obviously presenting yourself in like a
Yeah.
good light, but still feels authentic and you're not like I mean, it's hard because you do have to like talk yourself up, but you got to find that balance.
I think,
Mm,
yeah, you've got to find that balance. Like you've got to be confident, but you've also got to be yourself. And
mm,
everyone like elaborates from the truth, but don't ever lie, because
yeah. Yes.
you
Yeah.
will be caught out. Trust me, it's
Mm-hmm.
happened to me.
Yeah.
And yeah. So yeah,
Oh.
like the one piece of advice I could give people as well, um, is to try and sort of separate yourself and think of as your creative. Like, say for example, if you're writing for a position,
Mm,
it's no different from applying from a job position. There's a position
mm-hmm.
description, there's a brief. Just because your creative work that you put so much effort into, that you tried to make fit the brief, because it doesn't get picked doesn't mean that it's not good work, or
Mm-hmm.
it like it wasn't of a high standard, or it wasn't a waste of time. It's more so you just weren't the best person that fit that brief.
Yeah.
Like your piece just didn't fit. And so I think that's something I've tried to take on creatively
Mm-hmm.
when I apply for anything like copywriting and stuff, because you think about it, it's like it's just another job at the end of the day. Like even though
Yeah.
it's a skill that you
Mm-hmm.
fine tune for each creative brief, whatever you do. So yeah.
Yeah. Now that's a really good point of how we can kind of internalize rejection to mean something it doesn't. Because you're right,
Mm.
just because you got rejected from something, it doesn't mean the work you did or the application you did or the person you are. Because I know, like, when you talk about relationships and stuff, that's like a whole nother ball game because it's like they're rejecting me personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't mean you're wrong or bad or not good enough, but that's how we
Mm.
take it most of the time. And so it's really difficult as you're an adult and you don't necessarily have people patting you on the back telling you it's okay every time you get rejected like you do
Mm.
when you're like a little kid, and you have to almost self-soothe and like rewire that part of your brain that automatically goes, oh, I'm not enough now, like this
Yeah.
is them telling me I'm not good enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. So it is really difficult to come to grips with that, and realize, yeah, that's not the truth. And there's lots of ways to do it. I saw this on TikTok, of course. Where else? There was this girl on TikTok. I can't remember her name, so I'm very sorry. But she was posting about shadow work and kind of, which is like a type of kind of, it's mainly a journaling process where you kind of are digging deeper into like your shadow self. I think it's by Carl Jung. He's the psychologist that came up with
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and she had like this journal prompt of like, you kind of write down how you feel, and then you write down what do I make it mean when I feel like this? And then you keep going. And oh, like as you go down the list, you get to like this core belief that you hold that might be hindering you. So I think she
Okay.
gave the example of like, I feel lonely or something like that.
Yeah.
And she was like, what do I make it mean when I feel lonely? And I make it mean that no one wants to hang out with me. Well, what do I make it mean when no one wants to hang out with me? Oh, I'm not good enough to hang
Mm.
out with. What do I make it mean? Blah, blah, blah. And you go down this list. And most of the time, you're going to get to a point where it's like, I believe I'm not good enough. Because I think that's like
Yeah.
a little thing we all hold inside of us. We're like all wanting this
Yeah.
acceptance to be okay, that we're okay.
Yeah, and
So I
that's
think
like
that,
huge in the arts
yeah,
industry. Like even like with imposter
yes,
syndrome, you like
yeah,
you go, oh, like there's always sort of that level. And even like um I wrote a blog post about this, but um when there's always going to be a level of success that you reach in the creative field that you're still not going to feel like you're enough. Victoria Aveyard, who wrote the Red Queen series and Realm Breaker, she's a New York Times
yeah,
bestseller. She talks about how she deals with it on a daily basis, and she goes, "I'm never going to write another bestseller. Like, what if this is it? What if
mm,
I'm a one book
yeah,
hit wonder or a one hit series wonder?" So
yeah,
widely successful people deal with it as well. And I think it just
mm-hmm,
comes from like an insecurity of like when you see someone else excelling in a field, and like you're really proud of you, like you admire what they've done, whatever it
mm,
is, and then you go, oh, I like we're the same age. Like I know I've done that before with like, you
yeah,
know, actors, people that are in sort of like the media that are my age or younger than me, and I go, look at all their success that they've gotten really quickly.
mm-hmm,
And like for example, like so I'll use we love Taylor Swift.
yes, we do,
And I'm not saying she didn't work hard, she worked incredibly hard, but she's an example of a person who had everything that went right for her. And
yeah,
she also came from money, which made
yep,
it helped her get
oh yeah,
as successful as she was. So like it's not really fair to sort of put yourself on a pedestal to the people that are already succeeding, because you're only seeing a surface level, and you have completely different circumstances. Like people, like I see people publishing books my own age, and we see this on
mm,
TikTok, like influencers publishing books, and we're like, how are you doing this? And you
mm,
start to like question your own um, creative drive and your own level of success against other
yeah,
people's, and that's also rooted in like the fear of rejection, I find, especially for me.
definitely, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like somehow someone else's success diminishes what you've done, and is like almost like a rejection of
Mm,
like that's almost a rejection in and of itself. Sometimes when you see someone your age or similar life experience, whatever, being what you want to be. And I always think like the idea of envy, like tried to reframe that over a few years, and like envy is always kind of like a guiding light to what you really want, you know, like because you're like envious of something that someone has and you're like, oh, but it's because I want it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that feeling of envy and almost like bring mixed in with the rejection. Like you can experience like all these things at once, and it leads to you wanting to diminish their success somehow sometimes in order to make yourself feel better.
Yeah.
But and it goes hand in hand is you also have to be realistic, and it goes back to our episode on success. You have to be realistic about how they got there, like Taylor Swift, you were saying, like she came from money, her parents were able to move her to Nashville, like not all
Mm-hmm.
families would have been able to do that. So she was in right place, right time, because she had the support and the financial ability to do so.
But not everyone
um
has that. And
but
so it's
not
like,
everyone can
yeah.
do that. Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
But yeah, so I think with rejection it can be really scary to be looking at everyone that's succeeding and then go, well, I can put myself out there confidently, because
Yeah,
then you're just like
definitely.
terrified. It's like, how do you
Yeah.
get over that hump of like, okay, how do I put myself out there, knowing I'm probably going to get rejected, but also knowing if I don't put myself out there,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get anywhere.
Mm.
Because yeah, I'm coming up with like my process of writing my first manuscript. I'm hoping within the next year to start being able to like pitch to literary agents, and I'm already like prepping for like the amount of rejection I'm going to get doing that. And
Mm.
it's going to be soul crushing. Let's not beat around the bush. Like
Yeah.
it's going to be awful. I've worked on this book probably by the time I'm ready to like pitch it, probably almost 4 years. I will have been working on
Yeah.
this book by that time. And then I'm going to have all these people that work in their little publishing places being like, nope, 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 nope. And like,
Yep.
that's going to suck.
Yeah.
And there's no beating around the bush with that. And there's no way to get around it, because if I don't do that, I'm not going to publish the book.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a double-edged sword sometimes. It's like the only
Mm.
way out is through sometimes with rejection.
Yeah, literally. Like the
Yeah.
more you do it, the more you sort of build that thicker skin. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, you'll eventually like we talk about this quite a bit, but like ego over what you want. And so
Yeah.
if you really want it, you're gonna like put yourself through
Yeah.
those situations that are gonna make it feel like, for example, like sending your piece of work that you've like it's your baby, you've worked on it for four
Yeah.
years, and then just like having to deal with all these people saying no, or like you know, we see it all the time, like on book talk, authors that are trying to get published the traditional way. I
Yeah.
follow this girl, she's in New York City. She's been working on a book. She's redrafted it like I think 7 times, and
Yeah.
she says it always gets rejected. She had a literary agent, and then the literary agent wanted her to go in a different area with the book, which she didn't agree with. So then she
Yeah.
dropped her literary agent because her literary agent wasn't
Yikes.
getting it published. And
Yep.
so that made it even harder. And now she's just like pitching it to all these people. And she said, I sent out 100 different pictures and I got back within like 2 days 12 already. And she's like a month's work of like writing all this stuff, and already 12 people, like
I've
it's a
just
lot.
said no.
Yeah,
That's
that
a
just said
lot to
no.
get it once.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so I think that like as well, social media these days, it only gives us the surface level, and we talk about
Yeah.
it like how we love social media because I feel like we bang on about how dangerous it is, but it's more
Yeah.
so you're only, as long as you remember, you're only seeing that one level, because like people
Yeah.
can post a picture and be like, I've published a book, and you see that and you like, or like I've written a song, or I'm going to be in this movie, and like, but then if you do a little bit more research into it, like it might be through networking, it might be a movie they're producing, you don't know the circumstances of how they got there.
So knowing that we can't walk through life without facing rejection at some point, how do you think there are ways that us as like young people and job seekers and creatives can put ourselves out there and keep that sense of like we are enough while facing all the rejection we're probably going to face?
Mm. As I said before, I think you just like treat it like any other job that you're applying for.
Yeah.
And just remembering at the end of the day, like even if it like, and I would encourage you to do this when you do your manuscript, to sort of like distance yourself and go, okay, I'm putting this out
Yeah.
there. Just because I get a rejection letter from this, publishing house, it just
Yeah.
doesn't fit their brief for what they're publishing at the moment. It's not
Yeah.
that they don't like my story. And so separating the art from the I guess like the process of like publication and pursuing getting
Yeah.
that out there into the world. You know, you
Yeah.
can always go back and sort of tweak it if need be, but yeah, I guess that's
Yeah.
my takeaway, that I've started to look at, and that's what I did in my third rounds of auditions for
Mm.
acting. I was for acting schools, I just was like, okay, if I don't get this, I'm not right for this school. So,
Yeah.
and I learned that like pretty quickly. Like I remember in my last audition, I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this. Like
Yeah.
a shout out to one of the pieces I've written about letting go of the ideal versus the dream.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to sort of sit down and like go, okay, I think this is what I want versus what you actually want. So for me, I always was like, I want to be an actor. So
Mm.
without repeating myself too much, but I always wanted to be an actor, and then thinking that I had to go to a certain school or like follow a certain pathway into that field.
Mm.
I got hung up on that idea as opposed to like just going back to the idea of acting.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
like if you can sort of set boundaries and make a plan that you separate, you're, I guess you're not getting rejected on your art, you're just getting rejected on the
Yeah.
process that you, or
Mm.
the path that you
The
chose
pathway.
to. That pathway just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So for example, if you find this in the future and I find this, if like I keep getting rejected by traditional houses, well then maybe I'll
Yeah.
look at self-publishing.
Yeah.
There's always
There's
another
ways.
avenue to do it. It's just and that's what we mean when we talk about embracing rejection. You embrace that, okay, this process didn't work, what's
Mm-hmm.
next?
Yeah.
Just because the plan A of trying to get my art out there didn't work, we can try and pursue another path. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
that idea, that nest, that manuscript that you wrote, because it got rejected by traditional publishing, doesn't mean it's not going to be a book. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I love that so much. The
Yeah.
idea that the creative process is its own thing. Like you can't be rejected from that process. It's yours. But then
Yeah.
obviously the pathway to getting that your art into the world, that's not anything about your art. It's just the pathway. That's a really good way
Yeah,
to look at it, to
definitely.
see it as the act of getting something somewhere rather than it's a reflection of the actual thing. That's
Yeah,
really, really
definitely.
helpful, I think. I also really loved, you spoke about this a little earlier in the episode. I love that you said, you know, it's okay to be disappointed and it's okay to have your hopes up. I think I've watched so many friends go through their lives, whether it be facing jobs or facing a new
Mm,
relationship or facing like all these exciting things and going, oh, but I don't want to
mm,
get my hopes up. And my response is always like,
yeah.
get your hopes up. Like it's
So yeah,
exciting.
it's
Like
exciting.
who cares if it burns in flames in 3 days? Like it's exciting
Mm.
right now, and all you have is right now. So I've been
Because the
trying to
other thing
embrace
with
that
that,
too. Yeah, go for
yeah,
it.
sorry. The other thing
No,
with
you're
that
good.
is if you don't get your hopes up and you don't get excited, if you don't get it, then you don't get excited at all. And
Yeah,
it's something to be excited about. So,
yeah,
um, like when I was telling you about like the pitch I had with the big issue, I was sort of like, yeah, like I am going to be excited about this. Like
yeah.
I
You
might not
were.
get it, but I am going to be
It's
excited instead
exciting.
of like, oh, so I'm shortlisted, but I'm not
Mm,
trying to get my hopes up because it's like, if I didn't get excited about it, I wouldn't have put the effort into it. And I also
yeah,
like, that's a lie. I still would have put effort into it, but
yeah,
it would have been like, I've got to do this instead of like, oh my God, like I'm doing
yeah,
the pitch and everything. It also makes it a little bit easier as you go along, because if you do get excited about something and then you don't get it, it's sort of like, it's still disappointing, but
mm,
at least you've been positive the whole way through, as opposed to being
yeah.
negative and like, I might not get this.
I also think that when people say I'm not getting my hopes up, that they're kind of lying to themselves. Like, of course, when you've got an
Mm,
opportunity, there's a little bit inside of you really like, oh, I
yeah.
want it. So when you
Mm,
are like spending your time and energy lying to yourself and going, oh, I don't, it doesn't matter. I'm not getting my hopes up. It doesn't really, I don't care if I don't get it. Like that's all the energy you could have just been spent in like, oh, I could get it.
yeah.
I could get it. It might
Mm,
not, but I could get it. And instead of like at that internal battle. And that's something I face all the time. And I think it's something just that's normal being adult and being creative and all this stuff. You are clashing with yourself, going, oh, I should be realistic or I should just be super happy. And I think the right answer is probably somewhere in the middle. But I know that we reference TikToks all the time, but I did just see this TikTok a little while ago
mm,
that was kind of like, and I guess it's a little bit about manifestation stuff, but if you only set realistic expectations, all you're ever going to achieve is realistic expectations. Whereas
mm,
if you dream a little bit, you could reach those dreams, you know, if you're,
Mm.
and I do think there's an element of that to truth. Yeah, there's some kind of luck and some, oh my gosh, this big thing happened and that I wasn't even planning on. And that happens sometimes. But I
Mm.
think especially when it comes to our creative dreams and putting that work out into the universe, sometimes you've got to put it out with the hopes that it's going to be a bestseller, because why not?
Yeah, because
If
why
you're putting
not?
it out going,
Exactly.
oh, someone might like it, maybe one person will read it. Like, yeah, one person's probably going to read
Mm.
it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
maybe it'll be a bestseller. Maybe you'll be, writing books the rest of
Yeah,
your life. But if you don't dream that big, you're right, you won't get the excitement of achieving that goal because you've been working
yeah,
towards it and it's exciting. Yeah.
yeah.
So even though rejection is a part of this whole process, that's all it is. It's just one part of the
Mm.
process. So, and
Yeah.
it's allowed to hurt. I think,
Mm.
people sometimes try and make you feel better, they're being like, oh, don't worry, don't be disappointed. It's their loss. And it's
Mm.
their loss. But no,
Yeah.
be disappointed, be sad, be whatever you need to be.
Mm.
But you're right, don't let it stop you from going again, or
Yeah.
changing directions by learning from it. Yeah, those
Yeah.
two things are huge. Like, you either try again, or you're like, okay, this didn't work, what can I do differently?
Yeah.
But yeah, don't give up. Don't give up.
You sort of have to look at it in like a critical way and
Yeah.
sort of like, okay, well, yeah, like problem solving, like what didn't
Yeah.
work. And at the end of the day, when you think about the whole grand scheme of things, rejection is a very, very small step.
Yes.
It just sucks that it's like almost the last step before you succeed. So like
Yes.
in the grand scheme of things, it's like one little thing, and then you've got like everything else that comes before it and everything else that comes after. It just happens to be the thing that either like stops you or lets you move forward.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
so true.
Well, thanks for listening. And if you have all enjoyed this episode, this will be the last episode for 2022. We will return again in the new year for 2023. Have a Merry Christmas and a safe Christmas. And if you feel inclined, check us out on the socials. And just remember, we are on your side.
At the Graduate's Guide. Bye. Merry
Bye, guys.
Christmas.